Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our second Chamber University program of 2020. We are pleased to host our Chamber University programs for our small to medium-sized businesses. This is a great opportunity to take some actionable items back to your business to help you save time and money and engage with your team in stronger and better ways. We are pleased today to be joined by our partners at Davenport University with Kevin Jurek and our sponsors, Eric Dumpus from Fraser Law Firm. We are pleased to partner with both Fraser Law Firm and Fifth Third Bank to present our Chamber University programs. Normally these are held in person, but with the situation, we are pleased to be able to utilize the Zoom platform and engage with you all in this virtual capacity. At this time, I want to invite Eric to say a few words on behalf of Fraser Law Firm. Eric?
All right, good morning, everyone. We're so glad you could join us today. Looks to be a very engaging and learning topic from Kevin. Fraser Law Firm is proud to sponsor Chamber University with Fifth Third Bank because we recognize how valuable it is for the Chamber to provide members like all of us with resources such as this series. A little bit about Fraser. We are one of Michigan's longest established full-service law firms that have offices in Detroit, Grand Rapids, and headquarters here right in Lansing, right across from the Capitol building. Some of our practices include business and tax, litigation, and trust and estates, just to name a few, but our attorneys are skilled in more than 70 niche areas, especially focusing on serving small to medium-sized business needs. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy this presentation today.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for joining us and for your continued partnership and sponsorship with the Chamber. Today, we are going to be talking about outstanding customer service. And as COVID has changed things, this is certainly something that has not gone by the wayside and will continue to be the critical importance for the business community. We're going to discuss how to ask the right questions, how to find and seize those moments of opportunity to really engage and draw your customer back. At this time, I'd like to invite Kevin to share his screen, pin his video, and we will let him take the presentation.
Hello, everybody. I'm sharing, and we are in. Michelle, if you can chime in, make sure that that is visible to everyone for me.
It is visible, yes.
Okay, good. So good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Jurek. I am on the faculty for the IPEX division of Davenport University. And for those of you that don't know about IPEX, Davenport University really has two different branches, if you will. The first branch is the typical university where you'd go to get your degree. But then they have the IPEX division. We specialize in corporate training. We do assistance with corporate strategic planning. We offer on-site courses at all the Davenport campuses around Michigan. We also go on-site. So if your corporation has a need for a particular piece of training, we do that. In fact, what we're going to talk about today is just a small portion of a training course called Personal Accountability and the QBQ. And so if you would like to share this message with more of your organization today, get a hold of IPEX. We'll give you information on that, and I'd be glad to come and help you out. So let's get going on outstanding customer service. Oh, by the way, this is very interactive. I like to work with you, but because I can't see you, and there's enough of you where I probably wouldn't have a chance to listen to all of you, I'm going to have you use your chat room facility today. And Michelle's going to be my moderator, and we're going to ask you a series of questions. So this first question is a yes or no question. So just put a Y or an N in your chat box. Here's the question. How many of you are in businesses that have struggled during this pandemic and really need to get your customers back in short order? Go ahead and put that in your chat room. And Michelle, just kind of do an eyeball on the yeses and nos coming in and let me know how that looks.
Will do. You know, right now we're seeing about 50-50. So about half the responses are folks who need to re-engage and folks who are thankfully not in that position.
Okay. So I really see two things here. So for those of you that aren't struggling because of the pandemic, there are certainly businesses whose services are greatly needed during times like this. You've got to work really hard to keep that business by satisfying customer needs, which may or may not be ever more growing in demand. For those of you that are struggling, self-included, on top of the IPEX job that I have and the faculty, I also own my own business consultancy, which is really struggling right now because a lot of my customers were barely open and keeping the doors open. And so, so for those of you that are in that situation where you are struggling a little bit, you have to hit the ground with the wheels rolling here. And in order to do that, you have to understand what your customers are going to need, because those needs maybe have changed a little bit since this late winter, early spring, when this all started. I'm not going to ask this as a yes or no question, because I think the answer would be yes to all of these, but how many of you have received good customer service and how many of you have received bad customer service? I think we probably have all really received those. But here's my question in the chat area, just in a few words. What makes good customer service to you? If you're receiving good customer service, what does that mean? Just in a short phrase.
We're seeing some comments come through. Helpful, follow up and follow through,
Yes.
going the full mile. Again, here's helpful and a genuine connection.
Okay, good. Let me give you an example from my own life on good customer service and bad customer service that I've just received in the last week. So I am presenting to you today from a brand new house. Tomorrow will be begin our second week in the house. It's nice, but it still has some work that we're doing to it. But it's livable and we're here and it's really nice. So let me tell you about bad customer service first. So one of the things that we have to do yet is we have to get a yard put in. We're having a family reunion in the end of the month, and I'd like to at least get some grass started. And the best and most affordable way for me to do that is get some hydro seed done. So I talked to our contractor and I said, hey, do you know any people in the area? By the way, I'm about halfway between Grand Rapids and Big Rapids. And Mount Pleasant's kind of in there too. So I don't know the area real well. So I'm leaning on this contractor for some help. And he goes, oh, there's this guy. He can help you. Call him up. His name's Chuck. All right. So I called Chuck and said that my builder sent me, and he said, oh, okay, well, what do you need to do? And I said, put in a lawn. He said, do you have a sprinkler system put in? I said, no, I don't. And I don't intend on doing one because my wife is retired. And my business, I run out of the house, so we can move hoses pretty easily. He goes, well, I can't help you then. Like, well, why not? He goes, it's too hot this time of the summer, and if you don't have an irrigation system, I don't want to put your lawn in. Besides, I'm backed up 6 to 8 weeks as it is. I can't help you. Okay, thanks. So I called a couple other places that I had referred to me from the neighbors, and I have some estimates going to get done this week. That's bad customer service. On the good customer service side, my builder has a crew that's been working on this house doing a lot of the carpentry work. And one of the last things that had to get done was there was a strip of about 6 pieces of siding that weren't done. And they were way up in the peak of the roof, and the siding had to be ordered. And so the shipment was supposed to come in that day. Well, it was delayed. So here's 3 guys standing there waiting for siding to show up. And one of the young guys on the crew came up to me and said, hey, we're waiting on the siding. The other jobs we're working on are a long ways away from here. Is there anything you need help with? I see a storm door sitting over there, a screen door. I said, well, I was going to install that screen door with my buddy this weekend. If you guys want to do it while you're sitting here. He said, sure. So in a half hour, I had a screen door that I thought I was going to put in myself, and it was, beautiful job. So if I look at those two situations with the landscaper and with the building crew, I'll give you the definition of what I think good customer service is. I'm going to make it very simple. Customer service is simply meeting the needs of your customers within your organization's boundaries. I'll say that again. Meeting your customers' needs within the boundaries of your organization. Now, if you ask somebody to break the law, for example, they're not going to do that for you. Or if it's something that they don't have the capacity to do, well, they can't provide that. Let's take it one step further. Good customer service, good service, period, really, means that you're doing something that you really didn't have to do in the first place. Those guys, young guys putting the storm door in, I could have said it, and I did say to them, I said, you guys don't have to do that. And they said, well, we're here and we'd like to help. So they did. So if you're doing something and somebody says, you didn't have to do that, you probably provided them with great service. All right, let's flip the page then. So how many of you can relate to this person? What I want to do is change now from us being the customer receiving service to the person providing service. So all of that providing great needs, that looks great on paper. I get it, but customers don't always cooperate. So in the chat box, don't name names, please. I'd like you to type in something that your customers do that personally drive you crazy. And maybe those of your coworkers. Things your customers do that drive you crazy.
I think we're starting to see some answers come in. Lack of response to proactive outreach, unrealistic expectations, asking the same question over and over, expecting the answer to change, getting loud or getting aggressive, thinking that it will change, saying you didn't tell me that when that was communicated, not listening or not paying attention to the solutions that you've already provided.
Yeah. And so I would assume that your coworkers that you are in the trenches with probably are saying the same things. And that thought process goes on in the break room. And so if you look at this picture, what do our break rooms and meeting rooms look like? I also say that we have these, what I call 10 after 5 parking lot conversations standing next to our cars. And we hear things like, why do we have to do it that way? When are they going to fix our systems? Who made that decision? When are customers going to learn to read? Who's going to do something about this? Like, who asks for something like that? If you have heard conversations like that, type in a yes or a no in your chat box. If this is what it sounds like in your break room.
Not surprisingly, the yeses are flowing in.
And so my next question, yes or no, is how many of you have participated in said conversations?
Again, the overwhelming response is a yes.
Isn't it? And what good does it do? What good does it do? Well, we'll talk about this. And in fact, let's talk about it right now. What do these conversations do to organizations? Because these are questions that we ask that there's really no answer to. When are they going to fix systems? Who's responsible for that? Why do these customers always do this to us? Don't they know our policies? When we have conversations like this in our break rooms, because we're asking these bad questions, what does that do for teams and organizations? And you can put a couple answers in there if you.
Has a pretty negative impact on morale.
Yes. Because
it harms the team.
this whining is kind of contagious, isn't it? And one person says it and another one will say, yeah, that happened to me too. And the next person walks in, well, what are you guys talking about? Well, this, well, yeah, that happened to me too. And I don't like it when she walks into my store, and oh, I walk the other way when that manager shows up. And it's cancerous. It's cancerous. But here's the interesting part. Many of the things that we are complaining about, especially when it comes to customers, is not really the customer's fault, but maybe it's our own. You know, why don't they follow the rules? Well, maybe our rules are really restrictive, or they're not easily understood. Well, why can't they figure out our return policy? Well, if they can't figure out the return policy on a regular basis, maybe there's something wrong with our policy. Why do they bring screaming kids in with them all the time? You know, they're distracting to others. Well, maybe we need to do something about, you know, having kids day or something. I mean, so all of these things where we're blaming, you know, John, you know, the author we're going to refer to her in a minute, John Miller, says bad customers. They're not bad customers. They're customers. And if they came to us to provide a service that they think we can provide, it's really up to us to do so. Sometimes it's just having a little more patience. Okay, we just talked about bad questions. Well, how do we fix it? Let's talk about good questions. This is a book, and I have a copy of it right here, and it looks backwards. It's titled QBQ, The Question Behind the Question, by a guy named John Miller. John and I have come to know each other really well over the last few years, and his specialty is personal accountability. This book's almost 20 years old now. He's actually pretty good buddies with Dave Ramsey, if you've heard of Dave before. In fact, QBQ is on the required reading list for Dave Ramsey's staff. So think about the type of work that Dave Ramsey does with personal finances, and being one who's personal accountable is important to that too. Yes or no question for your chat. Would you agree that you are personally responsible for providing good customer service and nobody else can do it for you?
Yes, sir. They do believe that.
It's up to you. I mean, you could have all the rules in the rule book, right? And we can go to all the customer service training we want to. But if we elect not to provide that customer service, or we have elect not to help meet that customer's needs, it's a waste. In fact, you know, one person not providing good customer service can wreck a business's reputation in our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook world. How many of you have, and you don't have to answer this question, this is hypothetical. How many of you have, you know, tweeted or sent out a Facebook post or an Instagram from a restaurant you were receiving bad service from at that moment? Like, don't come here. Well, everybody else and every other person on the wait staff in that restaurant is probably providing good service. You just didn't get it from this one. So you relate the entire organization to that one person. My landscaper is a great example. What he didn't know when he says, I can't help you, is that I may need some help getting some shrubs in the ground and do some other landscaping around the house. Guess who I'm not calling? On the other side of that coin, though, one person providing great service can help build up a business. My contractor's carpentry crew, for example. I mean, I've already had people up and down the street say, hey, who's building your house? And I told them, and I said, if you need work done, because he does additions and things, I said, use this guy. He's great. Wasn't the cheapest guy in town, but man, he's worth it. The other thing, and this is kind of a funny aside, rabbit trail. I have really long hair right now. I usually have really short hair. I'm living in a part of Michigan that I've never lived before, and I don't know where to go to a good barber. So where did I go? Facebook and Yahoo and Yelp, and I looked for all the barbers that are getting good ratings. So providing good customer service, it's not just to make you feel good or make the customer feels good. It's also a great thing to promote your business. not just because it's good for business, but because it's the right thing to do, period. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to jump into the nuts and bolts a little bit of QBQ. Again, this is just scratching the surface to get more in depth. Again, IPEX has this coming up in September, actually, on the Lansing campus, or we can come right to your site and provide on-site services. So let's go back to the bad questions and break them down. So in QBQ, John Miller says that when we ask bad questions, we ask questions that begin with why, who, or when. When we ask why questions, oh, the last bullet point there is it refers to others in a negative tone. So we use words like he, she, they, them, you. So it's pointing outward. Why equals victim mentality. Why do they always want to do things at the last minute? Why do the customers ask for things when they know we don't have that in our list and we have to special order it? When you ask questions like this, you are acting like a victim. Who questions equal blame. Who's responsible for that? Who changed the code on the security door? Who forgot to tell the customers that our menu has changed? When we ask those questions, we are blaming somebody else. We're pointing somebody else, and you get things like, well, not my job. When questions equals procrastination. When are they going to tell us what's going to happen next week? When are they going to fix this broken piece of equipment? When are they going to provide me with more training? Question. We talked about this one already. So this affects morale. It affects turnover. It affects people's home lives because we're taking this home with us. But here's my question. What do people do when they feel this way in our normal everyday world? What do you see people do if they have this thought? Why, when, and who questions? What do they usually do?
Looks like people, they get defensive, they're upset.
Yep.
Nothing real positive.
No. And so the question I have is, if we are thinking like this, is it easy, if maybe even possible, to provide good customer service? If I'm thinking this way, is it easy or even possible to provide good customer service? Yes or no?
No, it's going to be
No.
very difficult.
I contend it's impossible to do so. Now, I have to back up with this a little bit. I did this class for a pretty good sized manufacturing company in Grand Rapids, German-owned company, and about 80% of my room that day was German engineers. And I said, we shouldn't be asking why questions. And we shouldn't be asking who questions, and we shouldn't be asking when questions. And they looked at me almost in unison and said, we ask those types of questions every day. It's our job. And I said, but tell me the context in which you ask those questions. And so they'll say, well, why is the variance like this? Or when is that part going to come in? And those are okay. So I can ask why, who, and when questions when I'm seeking clarification, right? So why is this important? Help me understand. Or who is my contact person for this? I'm asking questions because I need information. When are we meeting tomorrow? Those are questions that seek information. But when I say, why do the customers always do this? Or when is our manager going to figure out this labor scheduling program? Those are bad questions that really have no answers. Okay, let's jump into, Michelle, I think this would be a good time if we have any questions before I ship over to the good question breakdown. So I don't know if we can open it up for questions so far to this.
Yes, if anybody wants to submit any kind of midway point questions via the chat, I would be happy to pass them off to Kevin. One question, I kind of had was, how do you recover if you've made kind of a customer service faux pas, or you have fallen short of your customers' expectations? And maybe that's a question better served for the end, but.
Yeah, well, I will give you a partial answer, and I will tease you for the next slide. The real first thing that you need to do is apologize, right? Because you screwed up. I mean, I don't normally ask this, the questions to the customer's face, like, well, why do you always ask for things like that? Or, when are you going to look at the sign here? I don't generally ask those questions to a customer's face, but just my actions may show that I'm not providing them service, right? So the first thing is that you need to apologize. And the second thing is to ask a good question that I'm going to have here in just a second. Hopefully that answered your question.
Great, thank you. And now I'm really curious to see the next slide.
Not yet. Any other questions from the group would be great.
I don't see any at the time, so you can go on with your slides.
Okay. Let's talk about this. And this is really quite simple. This is where QBQ stands for question behind the question. John Miller in the book says, the answers are in the questions. We can't provide good service. We can't meet people's needs until we know what they are. And we don't know what they are until we ask the right questions. So the anatomy of these good questions, these QBQs, they always begin with what or how. And they always refer to me. So they always contain the word I, the one letter word I, and they always focus on a positive action. So Michelle, you asked the question earlier, what do I do if I blew it? Well, we all blow it, right? So you can say, I'm sorry that you feel that way. That's not our intention, was to treat you that way, comma. The QBQ then is, what can I do to make things right? Sometimes the QBQ is just in our brain. So in the example of, I don't like the way that the systems are working here. Rather than say, why do we have such dumb systems? I say, what can I do to learn more about the systems? Or what can I do to get more information about the systems? Or what can I do to put in some input on how to make this system better? Systems is a funny thing because they're given to you, right? And sometimes you feel stuck with them. And in QBQ, John talks about thinking not outside the box, but thinking inside the box. Because the place that I go to and the systems they provide me are my box. Now, they can be tweaked, they can be adjusted, but only if you don't state what's wrong with them. That goes off into a whole different class that I do on communication skills, but what or how questions, it's funny, once you get into the habit of this, I'm going to go back a minute. I'm going to go back a slide. I catch myself now because I've been doing this for so long. It's a discipline, and I catch myself. I got a why or who or a one question that I'm about to state to the world, and I have to catch myself and say, what impact will that message have? If you've studied anything or read anything or done some training in emotional intelligence, you really have to think about that. So when I have these why, who, or one questions that come into my head, before I state them, I ask myself two questions. What impact might that statement have on the person that I'm speaking to? And what impact might this statement have on me once I've made it? Most of the time, when you think about asking these bad questions, these why, who, or when questions with a bad negative tone and referring to other people, two things are going to happen. The reaction that you're going to get from the other person generally isn't good, right? And I'm going to take my business elsewhere. And B, because they take their business in elsewhere, the impact on me is I just lost a customer and my reputation may have just been damaged, right? So if in your head, you've got this why, who, or when question that's just got to get out, think about this. Ask what or how. Ask, what can I do? How can I make it better? What can I do to get around it? How can I better understand? So think about when you have those thoughts in your head, again, think about the impact on the other person. Think about the impact that what you're about to say could have on you, short and long term. Good emotional intelligence stuff. We talked about this a little bit, but I want to expand on it just a little bit more. Oh, can I back up? I found on this what or how slide. You got to have to really pay attention to this. Focuses on positive action, because you can structure a what or how question that's really bad. Like, what can I do now to help you just shut up? It's a what or how question, but it's not in a positive action, right? I've structured it, but I didn't use it in a positive light. So this is always a positive statement. Okay, verbal or nonverbal. These bad questions are frequently voiced out loud. Yes or no question. How many of you have heard, now that you understand what the bad questions are, how many of you have heard the bad questions in your workplace? This is going to be a multiple part question, multiple yes or no question. How many of you have heard bad questions around your workplace? Yes or no?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes, self-included. And this is in break rooms. It's in hallways. It's in conference rooms after the meeting has let out. It's in the parking lot like we talked about before. And here's the reason that those happen. My need to whine or my need to whine or complain has to be verbalized. It so badly needs to come out, and I don't care who hears it. Here it comes. How many of you have heard bad questions in your home?
The answer is still yes.
This is not just a work thing, people. This is a home thing. Why don't you put your clothes in the hamper? Who left the bread out? Why didn't you lock the doors before you went to bed? Same thing, right? Same thing. These bad questions are verbalized. And if I think about it, man, I probably shouldn't be speaking that aloud as much as I might think it. But in my head, if I convert it to a good QBQ and I keep it in my head, maybe I can start taking some positive actions. Okay. Again, what can I do to make things right? How can I fix that? How can I figure out what we're really asking for? What can I do to work together with you on this? Can you see how that conversion works? You don't have to put yes or no in here, but can you see how that conversion works? Same situation, same way to look at it, or two different ways of looking at it. One is the negative why, when, who way, and the other one is the positive what or how way. So here's what I want you to do. This is going to be some homework for you, but I want you to do this right now. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to think about this. I want you to think about a bad question, why, when, or who, that's in your head right now, and you frequently ask it. I don't care if it's work or home. Regarding customer service, like we're talking about today, maybe you have that why, when, or who question about some of your customers or clients. So maybe that's one you want to put in there. But then I want you to convert it to a QBQ. What or how? In fact, Michelle, I think we probably have time here on the clock because I'm getting near the end of my slide deck. I'm going to give them just a couple of minutes to write down that bad question, especially as it pertains to a customer, and see if they can convert it to a QBQ. Then the homework assignment would be to bounce that off of coworkers that might be on the Zoom call with you today. Take it back to a coworker in your place of business, take it back home to your family if it's a personal one, and see how that works. So Michelle, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to give them just a minute of silent time here to do that.
That is not a problem.
Thanks. I'll give them 1 minute.
I had to chuckle as you asked the question about putting the clothes in the hamper.
Mhm.
As I've expressed to you, I am the parent of a 5-year-old, so that question has come up a few times, and there were some responses in the chat that parents of small children definitely ask questions repeatedly. But now how to change that to maybe more of a supportive partnership approach, and ask her how we can work together to make sure that those clothes make it into the hamper.
Right. And make sure when you ask those questions, what can I do to ensure that that's happening? They might say, well, I forget sometimes. Well, how about if we give, how about if you get a sticker when you put it in? Or how about if we put a sign up and you can put a check mark next to the times you did it, or so, so it's always, what can I do? If you ask, what can we do? I really can't force the other person to do anything, right? So when I say, what can we do? I really can't commit to that other person doing that. This is why having people that are personally accountable is like a holistic thing, especially in organizations. I don't know if that makes sense. In families, it's a little smaller unit and you can work together and things like that. But, in big companies, well, everybody's got to pull their weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that minute is up. I hope you did a good job of converting the why, when, and who questions to what or how. And I want you to take that back to your place of work or your family or wherever you ask those questions, and show them what you did. Show them your work. I have a closing thought before we answer questions. I have my IPEX job here, but I also have my consultancies and business consultancy that I own. But I also do a lot of little side hustle jobs just for fun. And one of them that I do, haven't done since the pandemic kicked in, but once in a while I will do a shipped grocery delivery. So if you've ever heard of shipped grocery delivery and you lived in Grand Rapids, you may have had me for a guy. And this particular evening, it was in the late winter time, and I was delivering on a Sunday night. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and it was the last delivery of the night for me. And the order had all things baby: formula, diapers, had a pacifier, all that stuff, and a really nice bottle of wine. I thought, well, somebody had a bad weekend with the kid, So I pulled up to the house and walked up. The porch light was on, and Dad answered the door. And I walked in with the bags and dropped them in his front entryway. And he said, "It's cold. Why don't you come in for a second?" I'm like, that's my last delivery of the night. What the heck? So I walked in, stood in their front entryway, and in the living room was Mom, and she was wrapped up in a blanket. And next to her on the floor was a bassinet with a tiny little baby in it. And I asked, wow, new baby. She goes, yep, it's our first child. I'm like, oh, congratulations. How old? And said, we got home yesterday from the hospital. I thought, oh, that's nice. I got warm fuzzies. I've got grandkids. And so she said, did you get the wine? And I said, yeah, that's right here. She goes, good. I haven't had a good glass of wine in 9 months. I'm so ready for this right now. So I felt good about that. So I get back to my car with my warm fuzzies, and then I had this epiphany moment. And I thought to myself, you know, I really did a service to these people and helping them out with their new baby. But I thought, how many people on the planet Earth had to get their jobs right, had to do their thing right, and be personally accountable to do it right in order for that box of diapers to get to that person's home? And I started to think of all the people that had to be personally accountable. The person who orders the raw materials to make Pampers, the people working in the plant that actually manufactures them, the person that got the correct sized Pampers in the box, the guy who drove the truck to deliver the Pampers to the Meijer or Kroger warehouse, the person who actually got them to the store and put them on the shelf, the person that shipped that, you know, got it correctly in the app, the guy who refined the gasoline for my car, the person who built the roads. And I started to think about this and I said, wow, we're really intertwined, aren't we? And I thought, well, if somebody wasn't personally accountable or had a bad attitude about what they were doing in their job, the whole thing falls apart. You know, what about the guy who was refining gasoline? I don't know why they make us put these additives in. I'm not going to do it. All of a sudden cars stop working, you know, or the guy who puts the signs up thought it would be funny to put the arrow on the one-way street sign going the wrong way because he hates his boss. Wow. And so being personally accountable, it's not only great for customer service, which was what we were talking about today specifically, but I think it keeps the world going, you know, being personally accountable. And so I hope that what I showed you today, and it piques interest. Hopefully it's a good learning experience, but hopefully it piques interest in the topic of personal accountability. It's almost a requirement. If you're going to be a person that serves others, this is a requirement. So let me close this by doing a little promotion of IPEX again. September 24th, I will be teaching the class in September in Lansing, all dependent on how the university is bringing us all back to places of learning. So my fingers are crossed and my toes too, that we are on for September 24th. If you or people you know would be interested, you can go online to IPEX. The link is right there below at the bottom of the screen. If you think this is something your organization could take advantage of, you can also go to IPEX there and contact the salespeople there or the people that can help you get people like me in to do QBQ for your group. That being said, I hope you found this to be a fulfilling little talk, short but sweet, and hopefully full of information that can help you to increase your levels of customer service. That being said, Michelle, I'm going to toss the ball back to you. I don't know if you want me to unshare this now and open it up to talk, or if we just keep this slide here and close out from there.
If you want to keep this slide up there so you can have that web address up there for folks to check out, I think that's absolutely fine. I really appreciate, you know, your comments. And again, I would echo the same, that if you're interested in more information, I mean, what we've shared here today is literally just scratching the surface of this issue and so many other things that Davenport and the IPEX folks can offer. So if you have any questions, you want to get your team up to speed and educated on some new resources, definitely reach out to Kevin and his team. So we do have a couple of questions.
Yes.
For those of you who still have questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat. I will be paying attention to that. But your piece about accountability is really ringing strong with the group. And you've talked about that customer service can be both helped and hindered by just one person in your organization. People are going to equate your business with the customer service that they received with one person.
Right.
So how do you build sort of a culture of accountability within the organization, understanding that everybody from the president and CEO down to the janitor or whoever has,
right,
you know, a responsibility for strong customer service?
Yeah, I have two parts to that, and it'll be a short answer. The first one is it needs to be expected. right? If you have ever been to a Ritz-Carlton hotel, their slogan is "Ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen." And I could tell you a lot of stories about Ritz, but we don't have time for that. But it is expected for those employees at a Ritz-Carlton to act and conduct themselves a particular way and treating customers a particular way. So it needs to be expected. The second thing is it needs to be modeled. That's probably even more important. It needs to be modeled. Think about yourself as a parent, right? You need to model particular behaviors. If you're leading a business, if you're the CEO and you expect others to be personally accountable, well, you probably better be yourself as well. So to establish that, the word culture, I'm a big culture advocate. And the word culture in a corporation basically boils down to this: the way we do things around here. And so if we expect particular behavior, that includes personal accountability, and we model it, that culture should be turned around if it's me turning around or enhancing, whatever. Hopefully that answered the question.
I think that's great. As you're looking to build relationships with customers, what might be some of the reasons that they're not willing to, be honest with you or tell you up front about their needs? Why do you need to continue to develop that emotional intelligence and, understand everything that people are telling you and everything that they're not telling you?
This sounds like a trust issue with a customer and with the people providing the services for them. And if that's the case, wow, that's a tough way to do business, isn't it? Because if they don't trust me as a supplier, my first question is, why are they still coming back to you? But if they are still coming back to you, I would throw it right back into the wind of QBQ. If you recognize that someone is maybe not treating somebody right and your staff, I can ask, so boy, it seems like you're upset about something. What can we do to make things better for you? So to me, it'd be simple observation. You confront the issue by stating what you observed and then put a QBQ right at them. What can I do to help meet your needs here? Sometimes, you ever heard the phrase, customer's always right? I completely disagree. Sometimes they're downright unreasonable. And I feel that it's okay for you to say no to a customer. Like we just can't do that. Right.
Sure.
So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. Obviously the last, 12, 13 weeks have been very different for everyone. How has, this COVID pandemic and the resulting crisis, how has that impacted customers? You've heard or read stories about, folks dealing with, low-level PTSD and just being, very
Right.
traumatized by this. How does that impact that ability to provide customer service and build the relationship?
I think the hardest part is that you can't see them. If you're a store owner and you have a customer that comes in, you can really tell that they're upset because they can't find a product, right? Or you can see that they might be struggling to figure something out in your place of business. But if we're dealing in a virtual world, like I can't see any of the faces. This is the hard part for Zoom presentations like ones I do. I have no idea what kind of reaction I'm getting from the 50 some odd people in the group, right? The same holds. So I don't know if I'm satisfying their needs. Generally, I can tell if I'm in a room of 50 people, whether I'm hitting the mark or not. Right now, I can't tell if I'm hitting the mark or not. And so the hardest part, I think, in this pandemic shutdown world is I can't see you. And sometimes if people aren't satisfied with something, they sometimes they don't tell you, right? They'll just go someplace else. And so I think that's probably the hardest thing. And so I think in this world, I think we have to ask more questions. If we're dealing with somebody via email, or if we're talking to them on the telephone, or we're texting with them, I think it's up to us, especially for providing good customer service, to ask, just flat out ask, are we providing the service that you're asking for? And if not, what can we do to make it right for you?
I think that's a great point. I mean, we've all had to, and, I hate this word now, but, we've all had to kind of pivot and, change so many things about, what we offer and the way we offer that, continuing to keep customer service as, a main priority or a main goal, I think keeps us on track and keeps us focused on the customer.
Right. One thing it's funny, I mean, I buy a lot of stuff online, or you take advantage of online services, or we use a Hulu streaming service. I was online with a Hulu guy last night, getting some stuff figured out for our new house. More than ever before have I been participating in the post-event survey, right? Answer 1 to 5, not satisfied to greatly satisfied. I've been participating in those more than I ever have before, because I want them to know that I'm happy or not happy with the service that I've gotten. If I'm talking to somebody face to face, they can probably get a good idea if I'm happy with them or not happy with them.
And maybe that is a nice kind of way to wrap this up. How, if you do receive good customer service, what's the best thing that you can do for a business and share that? I mean, how, once you receive it, how can we as consumers leverage that great customer service on behalf of a business?
So I will give you an example from my house. I got great service from my builder. It took a long time to build this house because we broke ground last fall, and it was the wettest September on record. And it stopped raining in the last day of September because October 1st, it started to snow up here. And so this project went on and on and on, but he stayed on top of it. And the guy called me 2-3 times a week to let me know how it was going, because we're like an hour away from we lived an hour away from where this house was. And when the project was finally done and we moved in, he came by and asked how things were going. And we sat back on our patio and had a lemonade. Actually, this is something stronger, but we'll call it a lemonade. And I said, I need to compliment you on what you did, especially your subcontractors, because all of them took care of me from a distance when I couldn't see what they were doing. And he thanked me for that. And he says, I don't get that very often. And so I think as a consumer, just a simple thank you to the person that provided the service tells them that they were doing the right thing. On the other hand, if you didn't get good service, you owe it to them to say, thanks for helping, but man, you could have done this a little better. I like you. I'm going to come back, but see if you can fix this better next time. Also, I think you owe it to the business to tell people, participate in, a Facebook review that they sent you. Most of the time, isn't it interesting? You'll see that like Amazon or Facebook, you'll see mostly people that are dissatisfied with something, don't you? Because I think a group organization's ratings generally are higher than what the online ratings will show, because the people who are happy just don't speak up. So sorry, I rambled a little bit there.
No, but I think that's a good reminder to, especially in this challenging time for businesses, to remember that support is not only financial. And if you received some great customer service, that, you owe it to this business to maybe, cheerlead for them a little bit and, put the sign in your front yard about the roof or the landscaping, or, go on Facebook and social media and give those, and give those props out, because right now, being able to frequent those businesses may be challenging. So, the virtual support, the online support is even more critical.
And as a service provider, I ask my clients to help me. So, for example, I'm an author, and in the book I wrote, when somebody gives me a good review on the book, I go back to them and say, hey, thanks for the nice review. Can you please tell your friends and family about the book, because they might enjoy it too. The same thing after I've received a compliment about doing a workshop for somebody or doing a coaching session for somebody. I said, most of my business comes from referrals. So I'll say, hey, can you just tell your neighbors about it, or tell your friend from church who owns a business about this, because, that's the only way that the word's going to get out. And so sure. I think it's okay to request your customers to, tell your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, Kevin, I don't have any other additional questions.
Yeah.
If you have any closing thoughts, I'd welcome you to share those. Again, we've had the final screen up here, and I would encourage folks to visit this web address for more information on the programs that IPEX does. They're fantastic. But Kevin, if you have any final thoughts to kind of wrap us up this beautiful day.
Yeah, I guess what I'd like to do, Michelle, is just point back to that last story I told about the shift order. I think there are people in organizations that don't feel that their job is important. But I want to close with this. Every person in your organization provides a good or a service that somebody else needs. Could be internal, right? To help somebody within the organization. But eventually, your organization provides goods or services that somebody in the community needs. And that person who feels that their job is not important, you have to tell them it truly is, because if you did not do this job well, look at all the things down the stream that wouldn't happen and this customer wouldn't be satisfied. And so customer service isn't just customer facing, like clerks in a store, for example. It's people all the way back to your production facility or your R&D or the people who keep your bathrooms clean, And so I think that's a really good message to take back to people, is that by taking your job and doing it really well and practicing personal accountability, you're practicing customer service.
Fantastic. What a great thought to kind of leave us on as we wrap up today. So Kevin, thank you again. We'll give you a little virtual round of applause here. We appreciate you sharing your content with us. Eric's and your team over at Fraser, thank you so much for the support. At this point, we will wrap up the presentation. We will send a follow-up email to everybody who was on the program with some additional information. But at this time, go out and enjoy this beautiful, beautiful Thursday. And Kevin, thanks again.
Thank you,
and
everybody.
Thanks to everybody.
Bye.
Bye, folks.